All right, all right. So yeah, we're just going over Yom Teruah, the day of the Feast of Trumpets, right? And we were just sharing how this day, what it represents, the significance of how it's connected to the Day of Atonement and the Jubilee and the sounding of the shofar blast of liberation. All debts are freed and slaves are freed, returning back to their homes, their masters, and so forth. And it's a day of redemption, right? Liberation. Queen, you got your hand raised?
Oh yeah, I have another question. So, how would it be like for the I guess the sacrifices or offerings now that we give? How would they look now in modern time?
Right. Well, since the Levitical priesthood has been suspended for a time until they're restored, us under the priesthood of Melchizedek, we offer spiritual sacrifices and spiritual offerings, right, unto Yahuwah, which is praise, worship, right, the lifting up of our hands as the evening sacrifice, as you see in Psalms. These are spiritual offerings that we offer under the priesthood of Melchizedek, right? So that's and then there are also free will offerings that you can also sow, right? If you want to give alms unto the poor or sow into ministries, helping the fatherless and the widows. This is also, you know, free will offerings that is also honorable before Elohim, right? That he receives as well as you doing alms to your fellow man, right? So yep, yeah, that's what we do until the Most High restores the priesthood when we return back home, right? So, but yeah, so this is what this day Yom Teruah is all about. It's about, of course, praising Teruah. We're gonna look at what that word is because it has to do with the trumpet, it has to do with a shout, right? A blast, right? So we're gonna look at this for a second, all right? So Yom Teruah, it's a day of shouting, right? Uh, this is Numbers of Bamidbar 29, verse 1. It says, and in the seventh month, on the first day of the month, you are to have a set apart gathering. You are to do no servile work, and it is a day of blowing the trumpets for you. It's a day of teruah, a day of shouting for you, a day of blast, right? A shofar blast or making a loud noise, right? So this is what this day is about. And so it's a set apart day, a set apart gathering, a convocation, and no servile work is done on this day, right? So it's a Shabbaton. All right. All right. So we're gonna look at also uh how this teruah is used throughout the scriptures, right? So we're gonna look here at First Corinthians chapter 14, verse 8, and it reads, for if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle? Right? So the trumpet, that's where we get that word for teruah in the Hebrew, right? And or shofar, right? And it's gives a sound, right? And now the shofar is supposed to give a certain sound that the priests or the Levites, who will be the watchmen or the guardians at the gates, right? And they would blow the shofar blast, and depending on how the sound is, if it's a intruder coming in, it's war, or an alarm, all these different things. This is what teruah means, right? It's an alarm, it's a blast of a sound. Also, is this blowing of the shofar, and it's celebrating with a joyful sound and joyful movements, right? So during the feast, there's a lot of shouting, a lot of joyful sounds, right? And the sounding of the shofar is to create this joyful noise unto Elohim. It symbolizes the celebration, right? A shout of joy. And it's a blessing for those that follow Yahuwah's path, right? But it may not be seen the same way by those who are outside of the walk, right? When they hear this shofar blast, because it can mean something totally different for those who are adversaries of the covenant opposed to those who are friends or fellow brothers in the covenant, right? Um, so yeah, so how you hear that sound definitely determines certain things, right? Psalms 89 verse 15, and it reads, "Blessed is the people that know the joyful sound, right? They shall walk, O Yahuwah, in the light of thy countenance," right? So those that know the joyful sound, right? That's very imperative as well. So in our Hebraic culture, knowing something means acting on it, right? Which you are doing, right? It's not a mental assent as, oh, I know what it says. That doesn't mean you know it. You know it because you function and you do it. You practice it. So you're familiar with this. This is a lifestyle for you, right? That's how we know that you know. Psalms of Tehillim, chapter 47, verse 5. And it reads, Elohim is gone up with a shout, the sovereign with the sound of a trumpet, right? So that shout, the teruah, right? The sound of the shofar, the trumpet. So we see Elohim moves according to this sound or the shout of the trumpet, right? So that's very interesting as well, and imperative, right? So we see that he ascends with the shout. First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16. First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16.
And it reads,
Hmm.
For the sovereign himself shall descend from heaven with a shofar, with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of Elohim. And the dead in Mashiach shall raise first.
And the dead in Mashiach shall raise first. Verse 17.
And we which were alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the servant in the air, and so shall we ever be with the servant.
Right. So this is what a lot of Christians call the rapture, right? Which you don't find here anywhere in the text, but this is called the catching away. This is the resurrection that we call in the scriptures, right? And this takes place at the Teruah, right? At the trump of Elohim. And specifically at the last trump when you read on to the other scriptures, right? And this is when the dead in Mashiach rise first, and then us who are alive when he returns are caught in the air with him, and we are transformed, and we will forever be with Messiah, right? So we see the trumpet, the teruah, has a lot of functions, right? Heavenly things and earthly things, right? So it says the archangel there, right? Um, and when we see you know, archangel, when you read what that actually means, it means chief, right? Or first messenger, right? So it's emphasizing the importance of announcing the coming of the sovereign. All right. So um, when we look a little closer into this, we see that this messenger that went with the nation of Israel, right? Brought them out into the wilderness, out of Mizraim into the promised land. We're just gonna read who this messenger was, or this Malak was, right? This chief or this first Malak, the first begotten, right? Let's look at that. First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1.
It was the right arm.
Right, right.
Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye have should be ignorant, how that all your fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all the drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Mashiach.
The rock of salvation, right? So Yahuwah's salvation is Yahusha HaMashiach, also known as Yahuwah of hosts, right? So we see that he was this Malak that followed them, that led them into the promised land, that defeated their enemies and so forth. And he appeared as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, right? Let's look at Zechariah, Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 13.
When I have been Yehuda, for me, fill the bow with Ephraim, and
Mhm.
raise up the sons of Zion against the sons of Greece, and make thee as the sword of a mighty man.
There it is, right? So this reference here to Greece is actually Yavan, right? And indicates its location in Europe, right? Is where the Greeks come from. So the trumpet serves multiple purposes, right? And it signifies a battle cry, right? There's a battle cry or a battle shout, right? And it gives an alarm for war, right? So it's a call to awaken the dead we see so far, right? So the teruah, the trumpet, is used to awaken the dead. It's a battle cry. It's a means of rejoicing, right? So it has all these different intricates uh and purpose for, right? Zechariah 9 and 14.
And Yahuwah shall be seen over them as his arrows shall go forth as the lightning.
Mm.
And Yahuwah Elohim shall blow the trumpet and shall go with whirlwind
That's
of
the
the
battle
south.
cry. That's that battle cry, right? So you see before Yahuwah it comes, and something goes before him, which is this battle cry, this teruah, this trumpet blast, right? So we see that this is prophesied that Judah and Greece, or the sons of Javan, are going to go to war in the last days or in the end times, right? Let's look at also seasons and Moedim, right? Let's look at Bereshit, or Genesis
Mhm.
chapter 1, verse 14.
And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years.
There it is, right? So where we see that it says, let there be lights, right, in the heavens that provide signs, that's allowing us to keep track of days and years, right? But however, that term where you say seasons is actually a misinterpretation, right? The Hebrew word is moed, right, or moedim, right, which indicates appointed times or festivals, right? So these are not merely just seasonal changes, but actually specific appointments established by the Most High, right? So it's essential to align ourselves with his appointments rather than just attempting to impose our own schedules or appointments on him, right? We want to get with his time, right? And get with his clock. Let's look at Daniel, right? Because again, if these are his divine appointments, right, for his people that he gave, it stands to reason that there's someone that is an adversary to his times, right? An adversary to his appointments that we call Shaitan, right? And he want to keep you from observing the Most High's appointed times, right? And let's see why he wants to do that. Let's look at Daniel chapter 7, verse 25.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand unto a time and times, and the dividing of time.
There it is. So we see Daniel, who was warning, right, that Yahuwah the Father has instituted specific times and laws. Yet there are forces attempting to change Yahuwah's times and laws, right? And we see that's the spirit of anti-Messiah, right? The anti-Messiah spirit. That's what we see is going on these last days, right? And even was going on during the Mashiach's time or the apostles' time. Wa'ikra chapter 23, verse 1.
And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying,
Hmm.
Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feasts of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my feasts.
Even these are my feasts, say Yahuwah, right? So when the Father instructs us to observe his appointments, yet others advise against that, right? We must recognize a conflict, right? Because prophecy foretold that some would seek to alter sacred days and times in favor of observances such as Easter, Christmas, right? All these traditions often rooted in paganism, right? We know that Christmas is mischaracterized as the day of the Messiah's birth, right? Which is false. And when historically it aligns more closely with the birth of Nimrod, right? December 25th is actually Nimrod's birthday in reality. So we know that Yahushua was likely born during the Feast of Tabernacles, right? During the fall season. So again, we see that there's somebody who wants to change things, to have you worshiping not the creator and not in alignment with his times and his seasons and so forth, but aligned with another's time and seasons. All right. We're gonna look at some other things here that this trumpet signifies. All right. So we're gonna examine some more. Let's look at Numbers of Bamidbar chapter 10, verse 1.
And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Make thee 2 trumpets of silver of a whole piece shalt thou make them, that thou mayest use them for the calling of the assembly, and for the journeying of the camps. And when they shall blow them, with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to thee at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And if they blow but with 1 trumpet, then the princes which are heads of the 1,000 of Israel shall gather themselves unto thee. When ye blow an alarm to Teruah, a series of a sharp blast, then the camps that lie on the east part shall go forward. When ye blow an alarm to Teruah the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall take their journey, and they shall blow an alarm to Teruah for their journey. But when the congregation is to be gathered together, ye shall blow a long blast, but ye shall not sound an alarm to Teruah. And the sons of Aharon, the preachers, shall blow with the trumpets, and they shall be to you for an ordinance forever throughout your generations. And if you go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, then ye shall blow an alarm to Teruah with the trumpet, and ye shall blow, remember before Yahweh Elohim, and ye shall be saved from your enemies. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, ye shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your Elohim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim.
There it is, right? So notice all these different aspects that the teruah is used for, right? We see it for the gathering of the congregation, the tribes, right? As an alarm for the camp, right? To get ready for certain different things, right? It shows you that the priests were the ones who blew the trumpets. These were the watchmen, right? The guards or the guardians, right? When you go to war, right? You are to blow the shofar blast before you actually enter into the war, so that Yahuwah is the one who is going to go before you, right? And that you are remembered before Yahuwah Elohim, and He is the one that's going to save you from your enemies, right? So we see that all these things, right? The teruah is used for your feast days, right? Beginning of the months, all these different things is all a part of what the teruah is used for. And, and there's a memorial for you, right? Also, Yom Teruah is also not a, like I was telling you, it's not a also good day for the adversaries of Yahuwah, right? Because it prophesies of a day of judgment, a day of recompense, right? That the Father is going to bring, also called Jacob's trouble, right? Let's look at a little bit of this in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7.
Alas, for the day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of your cold trouble, but he shall be saved out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it shall come to pass in that day, that Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him.
Mm.
But they shall serve Yahuwah the Elohim, and David their king, who I raised up unto them. Therefore thou shalt not, O my servant Jacob, saith Yahuwah, neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of thy captivity. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid. For I am with thee, saith Yahuwah, to save thee. Though I make a full end of all nations, but I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of thee. But I will correct thee in measure, and will not leave thee altogether unpunished.
There it is, right? So we see what this day also represents, right? Day of judgment. It's a day of salvation, right? But it's also a day of chastening, all right? So those that are for the covenant opposed to those who are against the covenant. So we see all these things are prophetic also. So these are a shadow, like, so us celebrating Yom Teruah is also a shadow of things that are to come to pass, right? That are prophetic as well. All right. Let's look at also the book of remembrance here in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16.
Then they that fear Yahuwah spake often one to another, and Yahuwah hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that fear Yahuwah and that thought upon his name.
That thought upon his name, right? So notice that. So notice it's a memorial when you blow the shofar, right? That you are memorialized, and therefore you also are saved by your enemies by blowing the shofar. So we see Jacob's trouble or the great tribulation is going to happen, right? The great and dreadful day of Yahuwah, right, is going to happen. But it says that Jacob shall be saved out of it, right? So the shofar blast it helps those that are in Yahuwah to be saved from their enemies. We see that it's a memorial. We see those who fear Yahuwah, right? There's a book of remembrance written out for them, right? And their names are written in this book, right? Those who fear him and think upon his name. Verse 17.
And they shall be mine, saith Yahuwah of hosts, in that day, when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them, as a man spareth his own son that serveth him.
Mm-hmm.
Then shall ye return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth Elohim and him that serveth him not.
So notice this day of judgment, Yom Teruah, right? The time of Jacob's trouble, but those who are in covenant will be saved from it, right? He will be saved from this trouble, right? Those who are memorialized, those who have been written in the book of remembrance for those that fear Yahuwah, that guard his covenant, right? That know his name and think upon his name. All right. They're considered the jewels of Elohim, right? This is his peculiar treasure, and he's going to spare them from the great tribulation. He's going to spare them from being destroyed with the rest of the nations, right? So we see that this teruah, right? This shouting or this shofar blast is also how you get memorialized as well. Okay. Um, let's look at Shemot, Exodus 19, verse 5 here.
Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the
Above all people, all type of,
yeah.
right? For all the earth is his, right? But so um notice that those who are written in the book, right? Those who are in covenant are able to discern between those who are righteous and those who are wicked, right? Those who serve Elohim and those who don't. Yahuwah is making a separation, right? For those who are guarding his covenant, right? So they're written in the book of remembrance, right? Um, there's a separation, right? And then they're considered the jewels of Elohim, right? This is his peculiar treasure, as we just read in Shemot, Exodus 19 and 5. And also you see that in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6, right? And so we see that if we wish to be his chosen people, right, we have to follow his ways. Just because you are born an Israelite don't mean you just automatically chosen, right? There's a activation that takes place within your ruach and in your DNA when you actually grab hold of the covenant and been quickened by his spirit, right? You can be an Israelite by the flesh, but dead in the spirit, right? So you become chosen when you answer the call and you receive the ruach and you are being quickened by his spirit, and there's an activation that takes place, a function that follows, right? So if we are seeking that, right, for those who are seeking to be chosen, his chosen people, we have to follow his ways. We have to follow his appointments, his Torah, his instructions, right? And we cannot claim that he has abolished or has, outdated, or his Torah is outdated, right? We can't have that type of mindset because Yahuwah doesn't change, right? He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So we have to adhere to his instructions, right? So the first five books of the Torah, this represents your ketubah, right? Your marriage covenant between you and the Creator. This is your wedding vows, right? So if we desire a relationship with him, we must honor those vows, and then we will be spared from Jacob's trouble, right? Of going through that chastisement because being disobedient, right? So um y'all set things up, right? And you get to choose what you want to be a part of, right? Because I know there's also certain groups that say, well, they love the Father, they seek his ways, and they say, yeah, right, we love Elohim, right? But we need to still talk to those who, may not keep the Moedim, right? And try to justify not keeping the Moedim because, the Moedim are very important. Shaul said that they are a shadow of things to come, right? And let no one rob you of your reward, right? So there's a reward for rehearsing these Moedim, these appointed times, and guarding them, right? They're a shadow of things to come, and they are to be fulfilled, right? A lot of these things are prophetic, right? So yet they haven't been fulfilled yet, and you still need to keep them and rehearse them, until that day comes, right? You remember the five foolish virgins, they lamps wasn't lit, their oil wasn't, present. They needed to get some because they wasn't in tune, right? They wasn't watching, they was asleep, they was off doing something else. While those who are watching, right, they knew when the bridegroom came and they was ready. All right. So those are those who are prepared. They are rehearsing to be, righteous brides for the bridegroom. All right. Let's look at Yeshayahu, Isaiah 58, verse 1.
Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet,
Mhm.
and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins.
There it is. So we see that Teruah is also a battle cry. It's um a shout, right? A cry out, right? So your voice can be a teruah or be a trumpet, right? Crying aloud, right? So cry aloud from your throat, scream, holler, right? Do not hold back or spare. Lift up your voice like a trumpet, right? So it says Shole Haki, right? It says tell, explain to my people their sins, their transgressions, right? Rebellion and disobedience. So you have to go in and show them what they're doing wrong, right? You have to detail it so they know it, right? So that's why a prophet's voice hurts when you hear rebuke from a prophet, right? Because those of you, this leaven starts to rise up that's been putting you to sleep, right? So that you won't hear the trumpet, all right? Because you're rebellious. So and this disobedience and this stubbornness to where you don't want things explained to you on how you're in error or in sin, right? But yes, Yahweh is commanding all prophets to do this, right? To lift up your voice. Don't hold back, right? Don't fear the people, what they're going to think, what they're going to say, their opinions or criticism, whatever it is that's trying to stunt you or stop your voice from speaking. He's saying, cry out loud, spare not their feelings, don't spare anything. Speak what the Ruach is giving you to speak. All right. So this is the job of prophets. And yeah, it comes with backlash for sure. Right. But that's the price you gotta pay. Um, so also Yom Teruah is a day of inspection, right? Um, is a day of inspection. Many people have a strong aversion to this feast because you know what comes with it, right? And this feast happens to be one of my favorite feasts, right? But Yom Teruah is also known as Yom Hadin. Okay, Yom Hadin, or the Day of Judgment, and it's a significant day when Yahuwah judges humanity. Right, it's a time when we hear about the angels trembling and Yahuwah reviewing our deeds from the past year. Right, we learn about the importance of being inscribed in one of the two books, right? The book of life and the book of remembrance, or the book of death, right? Where the sinners are written in, right? So this can make the feast seem, daunting, leading many to dread it, but however, it raises the question of how we should emotionally engage with, Yom Teruah, right? While fear is one possible reaction, but trying to avoid the emotional weight of this day could be, counterproductive. Instead of making it scary, understanding the true meaning of this feast, can profoundly alter, our approach to it. So it's the key is having understanding, right? So we understand that this day is about the day of judgment, Yom Hadin. It's a day on which Yahuwah is going to judge the nations. He's going to judge, and he's starting with his house first, right? He starts with his own house first. And also, this is the time where angels will be judged, right? The Malachim are trembling at this time, right? Yahuwah is sifting through all of our deeds from the past years. He's inscribing us either in the book of life or the book of death, right? And the question becomes, how should we relate to Yom Teruah, right? How should we respond to this feast? And what emotional stances should we take to it, right? So the theme of the fall feast, right? We're going to look at some of these things to what Yom Teruah is. So first we have Malkiot, which is Yahuwah's kingship. All right, it's Yahuwah's kingship. It's crowning Yahuwah as king. Also, we have Zikronot, right? Which is a day of remembrance. Right, it's a day of remembrance. And then we have Shofrot, right? Which is a day of blowing the shofar. Right, it's a day of blowing the shofar. And then again, Yom Hadin, right? The day of judgment, right? So this is the thing, and it's how we have to come to understand the significance of this feast, right? So if we trace back to the 5 books of Moshe, or the Torah, does the description mention the concept of judgment? It's the question, right? When we look initially, when Yom Teruah was given, um, is the concept of judgment there, right? And the answer is initially no, right? But we're gonna look further into it. Let's look at Leviticus or Wayikra chapter 23. We're gonna start at verse 23 here.
And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying,
Hmm.
Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, shall you have a Shabbat, a memorial of blowing trumpets,
Hmm.
and set apart convocation soundings by instrument or human voice.
Cain, right? So you shall have a Shabbat, a memorial, a blowing of the trumpets. It's in the 7th month on the first day of the month, right? So it describes this day as a day of remembrance, all right? A memorial, right? So it's marked by the sound of the shofar. However, when we read this, it doesn't provide much clarity, right? Because what does it truly mean, right? Hey, remember, or the memorial of blowing the trumpet, right? What does that really mean, right? What are we meant to do, right? Because it certainly doesn't indicate that it's a day of judgment reading this right here, nor does it outright state that if the Torah intended to convey that it's a day of judgment, right? It would have just stated that plainly right here, but it doesn't, right? Instead, it seems to refer to a significant event that we are meant to remember, right? One involving the shofar, an event so well known that we are simply called to recall it. It's a memorial, something we ought to recall, right? Bring to remembrance, right? So the text hints that this is a day familiar to us. It's something you already supposed to know to remember, right? To call it back to yourself, right? A day that we should never forget. Yet when we read it, the connection isn't immediately clear, right? It poses the question of what event we are remembering, right? Let's look at Leviticus 23, verse 25.
You do no severe work,
Mm-hmm.
and you shall bring in an offering made by fire to Yahuwah.
Can, right? So it's a Shabbat or Shabbaton, and you are to bring a set apart offering, right? So it's a remembrance of the shofar blast, Zikron Teruah, and it certainly doesn't seem to be saying the day of judgment here, right? It's almost as if there was some event again that we are supposed to remember evolving the shofar. All right. So this brings us to the revelation, right? The revelation of Sinai, right? Let's look at why is this day called Yom Teruah and what are they to remember? This means they must remember an event dealing with this Teruah being used. And the word Teruah in the Hebrew means clamor, acclamation of joy, a battle cry, especially clangor of trumpets as an alarm, right? Blowing of the trumpets, a joy, also a jubilee, loud noise, a rejoicing, shouting, high, joyful sound, right? Uh, so again, when we look at this, what was the significance of that cry of the shofar that we are meant to recall, right? The event being referenced is again, it's this revelation at Sinai, right? This is what the Torah is calling us to remember, a Yom Teruah, right? It's the memory of this cry of the shofar that we're about to look at. Let's check this out. Shemot, Exodus chapter 19, verse 13.
There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through.
Mm,
Whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the
mm,
trumpet of your bell sounds long, they shall come up to the mount. And
mm-hmm.
it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount. And the voice of the trumpet showed forth exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled.
There it is, right? So there was this is the first time that the nation is hearing this sound, okay? This shofar blast from this mountain, this Kodesh or set apart mountain of Yahuwah that he descends on and ascends from, right? And this memory of this cry or this loud shout of the shofar, also known as Yom Zikron Sinai, a day dedicated to recalling Sinai. And it seems to be the central point of the text, right? And we should take the time to understand what we are truly celebrating here, right? Because it was a cry that the entire nation heard long ago at Sinai. And this sound went through all the whole nation's being, right? All that were gathered at this mountain of Yahuwah, right? So again, why is the Torah so vague though when we read in Leviticus 23 about this feast? Why is it so vague about this feast? It's just remember the shofar. If it is indeed true that on Yom Teruah we should be remembering the revelation at Sinai, then it seems straightforward that the Torah, could simply refer to it as Yom Zikron Sinai, a day of remembering Sinai, right? That will make it clear. But since the text does not provide that clarity, it implies there is a deeper meaning at play, right? The Torah specifically highlights the shofar's blast at Sinai as a crucial aspect of that experience, which is interesting because many would argue that the primary focus of Sinai was the giving of the Torah, right? Or, commonly called the Ten Commandments, right? Yet the Torah calls it Yom Zikron Teruah, right? Or the day of remembering the shofar blast. So if we had to summarize Sinai in a way that we should always remember, it would be as the time when we heard the shofar blast, right? And why is that, right? Why does the shofar take precedence over the tablets that we received, right? So to begin answering this question, we need to examine how Yahuwah revealed himself at Sinai, right? We have to look into this. So Yom Zikron Sinai, a day of remembering Sinai. Let's look into it. Let's look at how this was the day Yahuwah revealed himself to them as his bridegroom, right? Let's look at Debarim or Deuteronomy chapter 4. I'm going to start at verse 10.
Especially the day that you stood before Yahuwah Elohim in Horeb. When Yahuwah said unto me, Gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that
Hmm.
they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near and stood under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire unto the midst of the heaven, and darkness clouds and thick darkness.
There it is, right? So notice we had Yahuwah set upon a mountain in Horeb, right? And Yahuwah said unto me, gather the people. So it's a gathering, a convocation is taking place, right? And they are there to hear Yahuwah's words and to learn the fear of Elohim all the days that they shall live upon the earth, to teach their Yaladim, right? Their children. So we see that Yahuwah revealed himself in a cloud. All right. So this presents an interesting, paradox here, right? How can you reveal yourself if you're, shrouded in obscurity, right? All we see is a cloud. And if it's dark and hidden behind a cloud, it doesn't seem like a revelation at all, right? We couldn't see anything, right? Which can feel disappointing, especially considering this is one of the greatest events in history, right? A revelation that is blocked by clouds, that feels like a significant letdown, right? We think we about to see the creator and all we see is this cloud, huh? So why was it so cloudy, right? Why was it so dark, right? So this was not coincidental, right? There was a purpose behind it, okay? And Moshe addresses this in Devarim chapter 4, verse 12, right? Let's look at that. Devarim chapter 4, verse 12.
And Yahuwah spake unto you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only you heard a voice.
There it is, right? So we see he knows that all the people heard, only thing that they heard was Yahuwah's voice, right? So eventually that voice, it formed into words, right? Because really they just heard a blast. All right, that's all they heard. And when the blast sounded long, right? So notice how this blast or this shofar sound they was hearing formed into words when they received the commandments of Elohim, right? There was a loud sound of the shofar, but no physical shofars were present at Sinai, right? So what they experienced was a supernatural sound from Shemayim, right? The blast of the shofar was Yahuwah communicating with them. Even before he spoke the words, right? What they encountered was a voice, not an image. He was training them. He wanted them to get to know him in a certain intimate way, not based off physical by the senses of the eyes, right? But he wanted his voice to be reigning supreme within their being, right? So why was voice the medium through which we encounter Yahuwah instead of sight? All right, why do you think that's significant? Why out of all the senses we have that Yah chose the voice to make himself manifested to us? What do you guys think?
But like you said, my sheep shall hear my voice.
Hmm. And the strangers shall they not follow, right? Um, yeah, that's what he said, right? But what is so special about, I mean, for us, if to
Was it
see a,
scary?
go ahead.
Was it scary? I mean,
It was scary. Probably scary to see him, huh? That could be
yeah, it was.
yeah, that could be a
My his
possibility.
voice was scary too, but then it's like when you hear it, it kind of sticks in your head for a while. But
Yeah, his voice is pretty scary, right? Remember they was telling Moses that Moses, we
yeah,
can't,
we
we
don't want to
don't
hear
want to
him.
hear it. You tell us what he got to say, Moses. We'll listen to you now, all right? Yeah, so all of it is pretty scary, right? To fear you, huh? But yeah, so Yah is choosing to reveal himself out of all the senses that we have. He says, I'm gonna use the sense of voice, right? That they can
Mhm.
resonate with, huh? Okay. So,
Because he want to first, he want them to at least recognize his voice first.
mm,
Then
no,
once they got the voice, because like I say, any voices can be heard, but it's a probably a specific, voice. So when you can hear his voice, you will know who he is before you even get to see him. And when
mm,
you do see him, then everything comes in like a puzzle.
mm,
But hear the voice first. So when the
mm,
time comes, when he may call, you will know what his voice sound like
mm,
compared to anybody else's voice.
mm. Okay, okay, okay. Some good answers here. All right, so but if it was given the choice to us, right, most of us would prefer to see the Almighty, right, opposed to hearing His voice. I mean, what y'all say? Would y'all love to see Him opposed to hearing His voice at that time, or hearing His voice? You be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, first, he already did spoken, so it's like, well, can we see you? Yeah, I'm ready to
Yeah.
see you, man.
Because remember, he told Moses that prepare the people because I'm going to come down on the mountain
Hmm.
and they all going to see me.
Right.
I'm going to make myself known to everybody. So I'm going to come down and they all prepared. He coming today. We can't wait to see him. He coming. Right? It all comes down as a cloud. Right? And this voice that's coming out sounds like a shofar blast that's going loud. Right? And that's all that they hearing and they don't see him. They hearing his voice, huh? So a lot of us, again, as human beings, right? Um, we understand that we cannot have a direct experience with the Almighty in this world, right? In this 3D world that we in, right? But we wouldn't survive it, right? Because as Yahuwah told Moshe, people cannot see him and live, right? Is that what he told Moshe? He's like, look, I can't show you myself because you'll die. I can show you where I've been, though. I can show you my behind parts where I've been. That's how he learned everything about from the beginning. Moshe wrote everything concerning Enoch and all that, and all the way down to Abraham, and he was showed the whole history, right? But he couldn't see Yahuwah himself in that physical form, right? So in that way, we see that um, you know, Yah already forewarned that man, no man alive can see him and live, right? So we couldn't survive it. So Yahuwah told Moshe, um, he told Moshe these things so we can hear him, right? But when we listen to someone, we don't perceive them directly, right? We encounter an emanation of them, right? Hearing is still a genuine experience, and Elohim offers this as the closest encounter we can have, right? So the shofar at Sinai was Yahuwah's way of saying, "This is me," right? This is me revealing myself, right? And then later that voice turned into words, right? Which so it went from a shofar blast, right, a cry, a shout, right, into words declaring, "I'm Yahuwah Elohim who brought you out of the land of Mizraim," right? And this was his introduction to the people, right? So it seems that this is what we are celebrating on Yom Teruah, right?
Also, they was gonna eventually get to see him. I think what he said, like on the third day, everybody prepared, clean yourself and wash up, because
Okay.
after the long chauffeur blast, and y'all can come climb up on the mountain, and then y'all can come see.
Right, so this
But
they was
but like
supposed to, right? But they didn't
they
have
got too scared. Yeah,
it.
got too scared. Like, no, man, shit, I'm
Right.
scared.
So
Yeah.
notice our first contact is hearing his voice before getting to see him in the physical. So he's like, y'all ready? If y'all can hear my voice, then we can work our way up, I guess, right? Because once you come see me on this mountain, notice Moshe was with him on the mountain. So something supernatural was happening on that mountain for Moshe to be up there, and the finger of Elohim is writing on tablets, and he ain't eating for 40 days, and he's straight, and everything is good. No water, no food. He just on this mountain, and he come down lit up like he's bright like the sun. People can't even look at his face because he's so shining so bright, right? So he in a glory, and all Israel was supposed to go up that mountain, right? But we didn't because we were scared and we told Moshe, nah, we just hear you, Moshe. We gonna keep it cool down here, you know what I'm saying? So we see that. But imagine if the whole nation was ready and did go up on that mount. Will we be the real nation of priests that we was purposed and ordained to be, right? But
Mm.
because of sin, because of other things that we don't, we was running from and scared of in the presence of Elohim, y'all said, okay, I got another plan for you then. Okay, so a whole, that's when we had to go through this life a certain way. But so the revelation at Sinai, we have to understand that Yahuwah longed to communicate with them, and this day he made his presence known through his voice, right? So remember this day, it was a powerful, loud spiritual awakening for the whole nation of Israel. And notice there was no ram's horn. Instead, it was Yahuwah who spoke. You heard a shofar's call without the actual shofar being blown, right? This was a supernatural sound, all right? So essentially, you heard him before he addressed you, right? And there's a unique quality about sound and music that has the ability to awaken old memories within you, right? And when Yahuwah calls you, he wants you to remember his voice, right? Remember what he is calling you out for, right? Because again, there's more to explore about, about the voice, because the voice can evoke powerful memories. For example, hearing a song from childhood can transport us back in time, right? Like back in a place where we can resonate and reminisce, right? As if we was at that time at that moment, remembering everything we was feeling, smelling, all these different things, right? And at Sinai, Yahuwah entered our lives, right? The creator of the universe in a moment that was both astonishing and deeply sounded familiar to us, right? So this revelation is the revelation of the garden, right? We got to go back even before Sinai, where this voice was very, very familiar to us, right? It awoken something in our being when we heard it again at Mount Sinai. But let's look at from the beginning, Bereshit, Genesis chapter 3, verse 8.
When it reads, and they heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And
Mhm.
Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden.
All right. So they heard Yahuwah's voice, right? The voice of Elohim walking. The voice was walking in the garden, huh? So we're gonna fast forward now again to Sinai, where a similar scene unfolds, right? Now, unlike the garden, Sinai stands as a mountain, right? The people, filled with reverence and fear, right? They keep their distance, experiencing a set apart kind of fear and an awe in the presence of the Almighty, right? As they again hear this voice echoing around them, right? Let's look at Exodus 19, verse 19.
And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long for walking and waxed louder and louder, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by a voice.
Mm,
And Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, and Yahuwah called Moshe up to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up.
All right. So the sound of the shofar. Notice that the sound long, the shofar walking, right? Intensifying, right? And the voice was identified, right? A voice was identified as halak, right? Or halek, right? And it's derived from the root halak, meaning to walk, right? To walk. So this evokes imagery from the Garden of Eden, right? Of Eden, where following their sin, Adam and Kawa heard the voice of Yahuwah walking in the garden, prompting them to hide, right? And in Shemota, Exodus 19, the setting shifts from the garden to Mount Sinai, right? Yet the same interaction unfolds. The sound of the shofar resonates as if it were walking, right? Growing increasingly louder louder, reminiscent of that moment in the Garden of Eden, right? Now, this experience awakens our collective memory, marking a day each year dedicated to remembering the voice, Yom Zikron Teruah, right? When the shofar sounds, it stirs something deep within our souls, right? Connecting us to that significant moment when we first made contact with the divine, right? After a long period of separation, this encounter transformed us forever, right? And Yom Zikron Teruah is a biblical commemoration of the shofar's call, recalling the event at Mount Sinai when Elohim revealed himself to us, right? That voice is one we recognize. It connects us to our earliest collective memory, which traces all the way back to the Garden of Eden where we first heard that voice, right? So we see that um Bereshit 3 and 8 describes a moment when Adam and Eve or Kawa heard Yahuwah's voice walking in the garden during the afternoon in the cool of the day. Now, imagine being in their shoes, right? You just sinned, right? And now you hear the Yahuwah's voice, right, get louder and louder and louder, filled with fear, right? And that's trying to hide, right? You hear Yahuwah's voice approaching you, getting closer and closer. It's getting louder and louder, right? Growing louder as he comes closer. So just imagine that for a second. And we're gonna get a little more details about this encounter real quick. We're gonna look at the book of Adam and Kawa,
Yeah.
chapter 21, and we're gonna read through 28 here. All right.
Oh,
All right, book of Adam and Eve. You can find this in the Apocrypha or the Pseudepigrapha. And this is chapter 21, starting at verse 2.
then your father Adam came. He had thought thus that a beast had entered paradise, and he told me, "What are you thinking for, and why do you have the fig leaf on yourself?"
Hmm.
I replied to him, and I told him, "Do you wish me to tell you something or not? Until today we are like dumb animals. When I understood that of which Yahweh had said to us, 'Do not eat of this,' and when I saw the splendor, I took of it and ate, and I knew good and evil. Now eat also of it, and you would know, you will become like Elohim." Adam replied to me and told me, "I fear lest Elohim be angry with me, and I tell me, my commandment which I gave you, you did not keep it. But I told the Father, on me shall be this blame. If he asks you, say this woman whom you have given me to blame for that. She said, she the flavor of the glory. Then I gave him of it, and he ate of it, and became like me. And he also took a leaf of the fig tree and covered his nakedness with it."
So notice this. So Eve takes of the fruit, right? And she's telling Adam, like, hey man, you should eat some of this, man. He's looking at you like, why you look like this? She was like, I ate this fruit and now I know, you know, good and evil, right? So you eat of it. He like, nah, I fear unless Elohim will be angry with me, and tell me my command which I gave you didn't keep it. So then she says, well, look, I'll take the blame. It's on me the blame will be. All right. If he asks you to say this woman whom you gave me is to blame for that. All right. But taste this good old fruit and the glory of this fruit. Right. So then she gave it to him. He ate it and became like her. Right. And they went and took leaves of the figs and covered their nakedness with it. Right. Let's look at chapter 22, verse 1 through 4.
After which we heard that an angel, Elohim, blew the trumpet.
He blew a what?
He blew a trumpet.
So right after they sinned, an angel of Elohim blew the Teruah, right? The Teruah is sounding off, all right? And what happens?
He had summoned the angels and told them, "Thus says Jehovah, come to paradise and hear the sentence to which we are going to judge them."
Wait a minute.
Adam,
So the shofar or the Teruah also pronounces judgment, right? We've been reading around. So notice initially we don't know that when we look at Leviticus 23. But when we start to research what the Teruah all represents, we see it covers multiple facets, right? War, judgment,
Mm-hmm.
joyful things, gatherings, alarms, all kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And
Let's look
so this one here was like an alarm, like, hey, Adam done messed up. Sound the,
sound the alarm, right? And you know
sound the
now
alarm.
behind that alarm, judgment now about to come, right? And now they like, oh man, we've been summoned. The angels are summoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see why they
So
scared, right?
yeah,
You
because that's
know,
so for blasting. So it's I'm recognizing. So every time Yahuwah about to show forth his presence is always an alarm.
an announcement before you actually
Right.
right.
Up, like, oh shoot, somebody he coming. So that's like here's an alarm, here's a warning. Get yourself
Right.
prepared because he's coming.
Straight up, right? Yep.
Uh,
There we have it.
And it
All
reads,
right.
thus says Yahuwah, come to paradise and hear the sentence to which we are going to judge them. Adam told me, we have sinned, for Elohim is going to come to judge us. We were afraid and we hid.
So
And
notice they
Elohim,
wasn't just scared because they heard the voice. They heard because they knew what's gonna come behind the voice. They was like, oh man, we done messed up. We know it's a wrap. We might as well go hide because we know it's over with. Right? So they was like, oh, we know that a whooping is coming. We know something bad is about to happen because we have violated, right? This sound and we know. Imagine like that's like you done messed up and your daddy coming and you hear the
yeah,
keys opening that
mhm.
door.
Yeah, it's just like down today when you were kids, and you got a bad report card or something. You
You're
finna go in the room, or you finna be high.
right. You're
Boy,
right.
where you at? Come on out here. You finna
Right.
get this whoop.
Right. So they just like, children, they going to run and hide, right? They like, oh man, Pops is coming, right?
Hmm.
All right, verse 3.
And Elohim came to paradise, sitting upon the cherub, and the angels were singing hymns before him. When he had arrived at paradise, at once all the trees cast off its foliage, and thrones were set up near the tree of life.
Notice that. So now it's a whole judgment scene happening. We got thrones set up. We got judges appearing. We got the Malaks as witnesses. Was about to go. Was about to happen about this judgment. So you already know this is a scary situation, right? The host of
Yeah,
heaven is here.
yeah, even the trees is like poof, just
Oh
open wide up. Like,
yeah.
yeah, we moving out the way.
Right. The king has came down. His presence is overwhelming over here, right? They feeling what's about to happen. They like, oh boy. All right.
And Queen said, notice like in certain movies and even like this Africa, like when the king's gonna, his presence coming, is
Mhm.
always a trumpet blowing.
That's very true. Yeah, when royalty, the king is coming, there's a trumpet blown announcing his presence before he actually comes face to face with you. You know what I'm saying? So same thing we see with Yahuwah, right? And when he came down in Sinai, again, the shofar preceded him before you actually met with him, right? So it's like, yeah, this is the process. All right. Um, all right, so the book of Adam and Eve, chapter 23, verse 1.
And Elohim summoned Adam and told him, Adam, Adam, where are you? Are you hiding from me? Or how will a house hide from a building?
From its
Or
builder.
why, hmm, or
Mhm.
why have you hidden near the tree of paradise? Then you, father, replied and told Yahuwah, I have hidden because I am afraid. I am naked and I am ashamed.
Mm,
Elohim replied to him and told him, who told you that you are naked? I have scorned the commandment which I gave you.
mm,
Then Adam remembered my words which I had said, do not be concerned for the blame, for it will lie upon me. And Adam said, Yahuwah, it is this woman whom you gave me, whom deceived me. And he turned towards me and told me, what have you done? And I remember the serpent word, and I said, it is the serpent who deceived me.
So yeah, so now the children is now getting confronted about the bad stuff they just did. And you know how you and your sister or whatever had this talk before pops come like, hey, when you come, I ain't getting in trouble. Well, you just blame it on me to say that I was the one that got that told you. I'll take the blame for it. So that's what initially is happening, and then we see the whole follow up behind it, right? When now they getting confronted, but they ain't getting off. They think they maybe somebody may be getting off, but they not getting off. Let's look at this, chapter 24, verse 1.
Hmm. Elohim replied to Adam and told him, because you have hearkened to your wife and disobeyed my commandment, let the earth be cursed in your deeds.
Mm,
May you work it, and it will give you no fruit. It will sprout only thorns and thistles for you. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread.
mm,
May you be with many sides labors and labors, and you shall have no rest. You shall hunger, and you shall not be sated. You
mm.
shall be affected by bitterness, and you shall not taste sweetness. You shall be tormented by heat, and will undergo cold. You shall be pure, well, pure,
Operaz.
purpurized, yeah, purpurized, and you shall not be enriched. You shall eat and shall not grow fat. You shall warm yourself with fire, and you shall not be heated. You will to soak yourself with water, and it will draw back. And the beasts over whom you sing rule shall rise up against you. You shall be weakened because you have not kept my commandment.
So this is the discipline or chastisement of a father dealing with his children. He said, you know what? I gave y'all this paradise. I gave y'all an extension of my house so you can have your own family and do and have an abundance, right? Or you ain't have to work. Everything's already planted. You just keep up what I already given you, right? This is your inheritance. And yet you violate the instruction I give you, right? And you were immature about it, right? You're not taking responsibility for your actions. So guess what? This is how I'm gonna teach you how to be mature. You're gonna learn obedience through what you have to suffer. All right. So this is what y'all is doing. This is this was his discipline and this chastisement to his children, right? And just like we do today with our children. So we see the purpose is to help them grow, mature, and learn to appreciate what has been given to them because it's obvious that they took it for granted, right? And thought that they knew better than the one who gave them everything that they know, right? Um, chapter 25, verse 1 through 4.
And Elohim turned to me and told me, why did you hearken to the serpent and abandon my commandments with which I commanded to you? May you be in toils and pains. May you give birth to many fruits, and when you give birth to them, you will despair of your life because of the torments and pains. You shall promise yourself that if you are ever delivered from the agonies, you will never go back to your husband, and you will harden your heart in view of the great comeback which the serpent instituted with you. But may you return at once to the same point. May you bear your offspring in hurt and return in pity to your husband, and he will rule over you.
So again, he judging his son first, the man first, because he's the head. He's supposed to lead, right? You're not supposed to follow his wife into doing something wrong, right? He's supposed to correct her and then keep, uh, you know, in righteousness and leading in righteousness. So he gets judged, he gets disciplined. Then the daughter is next, which is Kawa, right? And now she got to suffer too in off and bearing children, right? And pain. Um, look at chapter 26, verse 1 through 4.
And when he had said all this to me, he became very angry with the serpent, and he told it, you too perish and be cursed among all the dumb animals. May you be withheld from you food which you used to eat, and may the soil be to you as food all the days of your life. You shall go in your breast and on your stomach. Your hands and your feet will be taken from you. May you have neither ears nor nails, and may not even one limb remain for you. Let the precious state which my son will take upon the earth condemn you because of the deceit by which you deceived Adam. But may you again be crushed and broken because of the evil of your heart. And I will set enmity between you and the offspring of the woman. She will lay in wait for your head, and you will lay in wait for her heel until the day of judgment.
Until the day of judgment, right? So this is the whole battle and the whole contest, right, between the sons of Adam and the seed of the serpent, right? That was sown in them, right? So notice this is that remember we talked about the inner seed war, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the war, and it's just for the sons of Adam, the offspring of Adam, to overcome and become mature to where they can have discipline, right? And not be given over to lust, desire, right? Foolishness, right? Because the same lust, desire is what got them kicked out of the garden, right? Not having
Mm-hmm.
self-control, right? So having to rule over your spirit. This is what they have to learn through sufferings, all right? Chapter 27, verse 1 through 5.
And that just shows you also that the serpent also had hands and feet
Oh
before
yeah.
it got taken away.
Yeah, he had hands and feet, he could talk, he could do all that, and he got stripped from everything, right? So
Which that
everybody,
kind of got right,
huh?
which that got taken out of King James. A lot of people would have been, what? Serpent
Right.
had hands and feet in it? Yeah, so
Yeah, and they even got ancient relics of serpents that yeah that not only had wings and hands and feet, right? But um yeah, they stood upright, right? They walked, they crawled, they have a whole bunch of ancient relics of old serpents and how they were viewed. But yeah, chapter 27, verse 1 through 5.
thus Elohim said, and he commanded both of us to be expelled from the paradise. Adam besought the angels and told them, wait for me to beseech Yahuwah, who knows, perhaps Yahuwah grant me a penitence for that which I have done, and I will not go out of paradise.
Hmm.
Then the angels wait for us to ask, and Adam besought Yahuwah and said, I beseech you, Adam, pardon me for what I have done. Then Yahuwah told the angels, why have you been waiting before separating Adam from paradise? Is the blame mine? Am I to blame, or have I not judged justly? Then the angel fell to the ground and told him, bound before Yahuwah, you are just, Yahuwah, and your sentence is upright.
Your sentence is upright, right? So yeah, these are the watchers, right? The watchers are always there when Yahuwah is making a decree and judging things. He has a council around him, right? Now notice that his child Adam is saying, "Man, maybe Pops would be cool, man. I don't have to leave, man. I ain't gotta get kicked out of the house." You know what I'm saying? Maybe he has a mercy, like, "Hey, Father, forgive me. Just let me stay." You know what I'm saying? And no, when the king make a decree, that's it. Right, and
Yeah?
he's learning this. Adam is watching how these things is happening. All this is supposed to be helping him grow, helping him learn, understand authority,
Right.
understand responsibility, all these things, right?
hmm And the angel's like, man, Adam, you about to get me in trouble, bruh.
Right, holding me up for doing what y'all told me to do, man. You supposed to be get you up out of here, dog. Right? Yeah. Uh, let's look at chapter 28, verse 1 through 4.
Yahuwah turned and told Adam, you are not to remain in paradise. Adam replied to Yahuwah and told him, I beseech you, Yahuwah, give me of the tree of life so that I may eat before I have gone forth. Then Yahuwah addressed a speech to Adam and told him, you will not take any of it anymore in your lifetime. I have posted burning cherubs and a turning sword to keep it from you, that you should taste it and become immortal and both saying, I shall not die ever. And you will conduct the fight which the enemy has conducted against you.
Mm.
If you go out of paradise and guard yourself from every evil, you will die, and after death you will arise in the future resurrection. Then indeed I will give you of the tree of life and will be immortal forever.
So this is the contest of a father giving to his son that rebelled and disobeyed him, right? It says this is the contest for you, son. You have to go out into this world and you have to prove yourself to be a man, a mature man, so you can inherit everything I promised you because you violated, my house rules. So now you got to get kicked out and go learn in the hard-headed way that you have to learn, right? So this is him telling them that. He's like letting them know, look. You can't eat from the tree of paradise because if you eat the tree of life in your corrupted, sinful way, then you're gonna be in this state forever. So you
Mm,
can't eat no more from this, right? Now this is cut off until you prove yourself, right? By going out in the world and dying, denying the ways of the serpent and the evil, and choosing that which is life, so you can reap life, which is eternal, that I always promised you. Remember that I gave you a world where you reap what you sow, what you plant, what you is what you end up harvesting. If you plant evil, then your reward is going to be wicked and damnation. If you plant that which is good and produce from that, then you will reap immortality, eternal life. Right? So we see he's giving them hope. Like, hey, and all is not lost, my son, right? This is the task you have before you, and you choose what you're going to do. All right. So let's read Bereshit, Genesis chapter 3, verse 8 one more time.
And they heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim amongst the trees of the garden.
Can. So notice in the cool of the day, right? And the direction of the sun at that time indicates it was nearing sundown, right? So this suggests
Mm,
that the sun was setting and the Shabbat was about to begin. And when arranged chronologically, we see that Adam and Kau or Eve were expelled from the garden before the Shabbat started. If they had waited for the Shabbat to arrive, we might have been living our ultimate Shabbat day, right? But this is why the world to come is often referred to as the Great Shabbat, right? The millennial kingdom, the where peace and rest, right? Where the Messiah is ruling, as we are destined to enter into a state of rest. But therefore, as the sun set, right, and we prepared to welcome the Shabbat, that was when sin occurred and aligning with that journey towards the setting of the sun. So he never got to enter into that Shabbat day of rest. So now his sons are promised this restful Shabbat for all those who overcome, right? That's going to be able to inherit the kingdom with Mashiach and experience that. But we know that, our forefathers in Egypt, I mean, that came out of Egypt, they didn't get to enter into that rest. See, I want y'all to understand that rest was going to be restored if Israel got it together when Yahuwah came on Mount Sinai with Moshe when he brought him out of bondage. This was us being able to redeem what Adam lost if we would have been worthy to go up to the mountain. But because we went off and was sinful and stuff and was scared, we didn't go up to be transformed so we can inherit all this goodness. Because he would have gave us the kingdom, we would have entered into that whole situation if we all would have went up the mountain. But we didn't. You see what I'm saying? So now we have to go through a whole nother cycle of getting purged and learning and growing and maturing. And he gonna bring us again to his mountain on Mount Zion. And if you ain't got it at this time, then it's gonna just forever be done. Because he has a cycle, and these repeated cycles to help us to inherit the kingdom, right? But if we is a point in time where all things is going to come to an end. And if you miss this last go around, right, which is Mount Zion, then that's it. So we saw with Adam, we saw the renewing of the covenant with Moshe that we was supposed to, rise to the occasion and we didn't. And now he's doing another one through Mount Zion when he returns. And only the ones who prepared and made it are going to enter into that kingdom, right? With Mashiach and be transformed and get new bodies and everything that he promised Adam for those who overcome, right?
mm.
So, so yeah, so this is the journey. All right, this is the journey. Um, So in the same
I
way that
guess the last call.
yeah, the last call, yeah, for sure, for sure. So in the same way that the voice of Yahuwah walked in the garden with Adam, desiring relationship and obedience, we see the same desire in the experience at Mount Sinai. He sought after a marriage with Israel, desiring for a relationship rooted in obedience. Let's look at Genesis Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 9.
Yahuwah Elohim called unto Adam and said unto him, Where are you?
Where are you? Right? Verse 10.
And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself.
I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself, right? So notice that, right? So he said, I am naked and I hid myself, revealing that his sin had exposed him, right? And how many times have we hidden from his word and from him? How often do we hide from ourselves, feeling uncomfortable in our own skin? Just as they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and lost their sense of identity, we can fall into the same trap, right? If we partake of the tree, deciding for ourselves what is good and what is evil, becoming complacent in our own skin, right? Same thing that they messed up with, right? So, however, when we measure ourselves against his word, we inevitably find ourselves wanting to hide. It is essential that we break this cycle and awaken to the truth. All right. We must repent and prepare ourselves for him. In the garden, they were given a second chance. All right. They was getting a chance to prove themselves. But what will you do with your opportunity? All right. Will you make these wrongs right? All right. Or will you continue to hide and repeat, the same process, right, of carnality, right, and not rising up to the occasion and growing and maturing, right, and want to remain in these toxic behaviors and these ways that are not of Elohim. So we all had that choice, being born into this earth, being the sons and the offspring of Adam and Kawa, right. So we go back to Sinai, we see a repeat, right? It seems like it's the same scene as if Sinai was a replay of the garden, and Sinai is no longer a garden, it's a mountain, right? People were afraid and they were standing from afar, and there was a good kind of fear, and it was awe in the face of the Almighty. And here they were hearing the voice once again, right? So the question becomes, will you partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or will you choose life to obey Yahuwah Elohim? All right. Will you listen to Yahuwah's voice? And if you do, he will welcome you back to his mountain. All right. So it's all up to you. All right. Let's look at Revelation chapter 2, verse 7.
He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the called out one. To him that overcomes will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Elohim.
So the whole mission of you getting kicked out the house is so you can learn and grow and mature, right? So you can put away the childish, foolish things, right? And grow to maturity to inherit what he's promised you, right? Not being disobedient, but obedient children of Elohim, right? So those who overcome, this is the contest of every man that is born into the earth. He has to overcome to inherit all things, all right? To receive back that tree of life in the midst of paradise. Revelations 22, verse 2.
In the midst of the tree of it, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manners of fruit, and yield her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nation.
There it is, right? So again, in this millennial kingdom, the Shabbat kingdom, of rest where the Messiah returns, we're going to be eating from that tree again in New Jerusalem, right? And it's going to yield 12 different fruit for the 12 months of the year, and the leaves will be the healing for the nations, verse 14.
Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into
Mm.
the sea.
So notice the key to get access into the kingdom, New Jerusalem, to eat from the tree of life is to have the covenant, to be obedient to the covenant, which is his commandments, right? That's how you have a right. No one can deny you access to the tree of life because you rightfully have inherited by obeying the covenant. All right. So if you say yes, then here's Yahuwah's rules. Right. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 13. Devarim chapter 4, verse 13.
And he declared unto you his covenant which he commanded you to perform, even the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tablets of stone.
Notice the covenant is the commandments. That's your marriage vows, right? That's how you get access into the castle, into the kingdom of your husband, is by being an obedient bride, obedient wife, that you are faithful to the vows you made, right? And you were faithful, so he now allowing you to come into his kingdom because you can be trusted, right? Because you were found faithful. So Teruah is saying, wake up, hear me, obey me, for when I come, I can keep poor, right? I can atone for you. I can cover your past sins, right? Because you have made your wrongs right. You've repented. So now I can cover all the debt that you have committed before you repented, right? I can wash that away. I can cover that. But if you do not repent and turn to what is right and fulfill your vows, right, then you will not be covered. That's how this works, right? So only those who are in covenant are going to be the ones that inherit eternal life and get into the kingdom. Shemota, Exodus 19, verse 5.
Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine.
All the earth is Yahuwah's. He is the king, right? He is the king. So again, Yom Teruah is about kingship, and it's about us crowning Yahuwah, right, as our king. All right. So the question becomes, are you prepared to hear my voice, saith Yahuwah? Right? This is that good kind of fear, the fear that redeems the corrupted, right? Fear that you experienced in Eden when you were hiding, right? This is that awe of Elohim, the true product of an encounter between the creature and the creator, right? So again, this theme related to Yom Teruah is about kingship, right? And what was the significance of this event at Sinai is that it marked the day when we acknowledged Yahuwah as our king, right? It was a day of coronation, right? Yahuwah's purpose for Israel began that day, right? Because that was the day we were supposed to become a whole priesthood, a kingly nation that would be the priest to the nations, the sons of Adam, right? But we didn't fulfill it. So we going through what we going through to be purged. So when we come back around to the mountain, we can come and become who we truly were purposed to be in this earth, right? But we have to go through the growing pains. We got to go through the stuff to get purged, to be ready and mature, right? Exodus 19, verse 6.
And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, Korans, and holy nations. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of
So
Israel.
this is your destiny, Israel. It's always been your destiny. Will you arise to the occasion is the question, right? Understand, a kingdom cannot exist without a king, and the kingship over Israel was established then. Although Yahuwah was king in the garden, his authority was disrupted, but there were no Hebrew people present at that time. After the transgression of Adam and Chawah or Eve, Yahuwah chose Abraham, right? And Abraham walked alongside with Elohim, right? And Elohim tested Abraham and he guided him so that his descendants could become a unique nation, right? This led to the formation of Israel, the Hebrew nation. And on that day at Sinai, Yahuwah chose us and became our king this day. All right. This is what this day is also uh, a memorial of. All right. So understanding that accepting Yahuwah as king is about embracing him as our leader, expressing our readiness to follow him and allow him to guide us. This was a crucial aspect of the Sinai experience, where we accepted the Torah, his laws, covenant of the vows, and this was to serve as the universe master's instructions. That's what we admitted to, right, and committed to. It was our acceptance of these commandments which signified our willingness to be led by him, recognizing those laws as binding and affirming that it was not only acceptable, but right for him to establish the rules that we are to follow, right? We recognize that he is our king and we are to follow his rules and that his instructions are right, right? We're redeeming, we were supposed to redeem what Adam messed up for doing because he rejected Yahuwah's authority, right? He chose to not obey. So when Yahuwah came down on Mount Sinai, when we entered into that covenant, it was for us to redeem what Adam forfeited. Okay, let's look at Bereshit chapter 3, verse 9.
And your Elohim called unto Adam and it said unto him, Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself.
And he
And he
hid
said, I
himself.
am naked. I hid myself, revealing that his sin had exposed.
It exposed him, right? So again, this context takes us back to the first moment we perceived Yahuwah's voice. When we heard his voice, we hid. And it is commonly interpreted that we hid out of fear. But however, a close examination of the text reveals a different understanding, right? We were not hiding from Yahuwah out of fear. Really, what this warrants, when you carefully examine it, right, is that he was afraid because he was naked, right? He was naked, so he hid, right? So this passage reveals that our hiding wasn't from him, but from ourselves. After eating from the tree, we became uneasy with our own identities, right? Our discomfort stemmed from our own carnality, and we rejected his rules, his laws, and guidelines. So in that moment, the voice of Yahuwah was walking through the garden, drawing near and calling out to us, right? This presented an opportunity, right? We had a choice at this point. We could have responded to that voice like we always supposed to respond when he comes in the garden, right? And if we had, how might history have changed, right? If we would have just responded instead of running and hiding, right? We had a choice. So we could have responded to that voice, right? But instead of hiding, we could have recognized that we had crossed the line and reached out to Yahuwah, declaring, Here I am, right? Just as Abraham did, Here I am, sadly, right? But we let that moment slip away. And that lost opportunity could be a tragic. It could be as tragic as the act of eating from the tree itself, right? Of running from that. So Adam's reaction to divine revelation was to hide, right? So we humans concealed ourselves, fearful of our own humanity. Subsequently, we assumed the role of the master, right? Remember, she wanted to be like Elohim. I want to be the master, right? I want to be the one in control and ruling and have authority, right? And ultimately, this led to our exile from the Eden, right? And as time passed, humans continue to see themselves as the ultimate arbiters of good and evil, right? Determining right and wrong based on personal preference with devastating consequences, right? So take Israel, for example. Just before Sinai, the latest victims of this mindset for centuries, right? We endured severe oppression, right, from the Mizrahites, from the Egyptian slavery, right? And how did the Egyptians view this? Right? They said it was acceptable, did they not? They believed that there was no more issues on how they was killing our babies, throwing them to the gators and having them being eaten, and they didn't think nothing was wrong with how they was treating Hebrews, right? The Israelites. They regarded the Israelites as outsiders, almost less than human, right? Reflecting their flawed perspective of good and evil. So again, when man decides what is good and evil, this is how we get far away from Elohim, right? This is when, and Yah's like, okay, I'm gonna have you learn from your wicked way. Since you think you know best, go out there and learn the hard way, right? So again, when humanity makes the rules and believes itself to be in control, we find ourselves at Sinai, where Yahuwah declares, I have delivered you from Egypt and brought you here, right? Under eagle's wings, right? Now he possesses a crucial question is, are you ready to hear my voice? Right? And if you will obey and keep my commandments, are you prepared to listen? Right? Because if so, we have the chance to amend the calamity that stemmed from the Eden, from the garden, right? We can go back and redeem our past through that voice, right? You will come to know me as your creator and understand your place as the creature in the presence of the creator, right? That's humble, right? Will this realization bring discomfort to you, right? Will you feel butterflies in your stomach when you encounter me, saith Yahuwah? Absolutely, right? This is the healthy kind of fear, right? The fear that redeems the distorted fear that led you to hide in Eden, right? It is all before your Elohim, right? The genuine result of an encounter between creature and the creator, right? So again, it's not about the shameful fear that comes from avoiding your own nakedness. That's what we confront on Yom Teruah, right? Sitting down with ourselves and acknowledging our own vulnerabilities. There's no need for shame in this because we are here to redeem our past and reflect on the year that just passed, right? At Sinai, the sound of the shofar signaled the voice of Yahuwah without words, followed by the giving of the Torah, his instructions. So our experience in Eden represented a failure to recognize Yahuwah's leadership, but Sinai was a second chance. It was there that Israel collectively proclaimed these words in Exodus 19 and 8. All right, let's read this real quick. Shemot chapter 19, verse 8.
And other people answered together and said, all that Yahuwah hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahuwah.
So this recounts how the events happened, or the events of Eden were revisited and redeemed, reminding us of the significance of those moments, right? So each year we commemorate that special day, recalling the voice of Yahuwah and the powerful blast of the shofar during Yom Teruah, right? We reaffirm our acceptance of him as our sovereign leader, recognizing that he establishes the rules and we are to follow them, right? So again, here in Exodus 19 and 8, Moshe returns to Yahuwah with the people's words, right? He's returning to the husband with the bride's words. The most profound act we can engage in is to harmonize our voice with his, right? Offering our voice back to the Almighty in a way that transcends mere words, right? When we blow the shofar during Yom Teruah, we remember the sound we heard before. We express our remembrance by echoing that voice, right? More importantly, we unite our voice with his, as Yahuwah has revealed himself profoundly through the cry of the shofar, right? And in turn, we reveal our true selves to Yahuwah through our own shofar calls. Thus, during Yom Teruah, as we hear the shofar in our community, we also sound our own, creating a direct connection, just as Moshe conveyed the people's words to Yahuwah, right? So again, y'all, this season represents significant challenges for individuals and families, right? It is a time for self-reflection and confrontation, right? It feels like Judgment Day, forcing us to look closely at ourselves and our vulnerabilities. The energy of this season, particularly during, the fall feasts of Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Yom Sukkot, Tabernacles, often brings financial pressures too, right? With the need to give charity during these feasts, many grapple with limited resources, right? Yet the struggle can deepen our sense of gratitude and compassion. Offering even a small act of charity or kindness from our scarcity becomes profoundly meaningful in Elohim's eyes, right? So again, this month is about doing good, right? Even us cooking, sharing food, and welcoming others, right? Convocating, right? Gathering together. While the demands may grow heavier, they challenge us to truly want to give, right? And it becomes a sacrificial act rather than, one of surplus. So as we enter into the fall feast, we are reminded that the earth will soon enter into dormancy, right? Culminating in Sukkot, right? So remember, we go through harvest time and sowing time, right? And as the earth prepares for winter, we plant our seeds with faith. knowing that for months the earth will yield nothing, right? It's a dead season. However, as the spring arrives with Passover, the seed sown from our effort and our sacrifices will germinate and bear fruit at harvest time. So Yahuwah often places obstacles in our path to help us plant those seeds in faith, fostering our reliance on him, right? That's what this is all about. All right. So that's what we have to remember. So understand that this event here, they replayed the event of Eden and redeemed them, right? Redeeming the things of the past. This is where we crown Yahuwah as king over us anew. And the most powerful thing we can do is match our voice with his voice. We are also doing something most important. We are matching that voice with the voice that comes from within us, because he is within us, right? So Yahuwah revealed himself to us most deeply through his shofar cry. We reveal ourselves in turn to Yahuwah most deeply through our own shofar calling. All right. So all this is significant. Leviticus 23, verse 23.
And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying,
Mm-hmm.
Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a remembering of the shofar blast,
Mm-hmm.
and a holy convocation.
Cain, Shemot 19 and 10.
And Yahuwah said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow. Let them wash them clothes, and
Mm-hmm.
be ready against the third day. For the third day Yahuwah will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And
Mm-hmm.
thou shalt set bows unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves that ye go not up unto the mountain, or touch the board of it. Whomsoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death.
Mm-hmm.
There shall not and a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned, or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the ram's horn soundeth long, draw out blast, they shall come up to the mount.
Wait a
Moses,
minute. So notice that. So notice before the announcement of the shofar blast, right? If anybody come to the mountain before the announcement, they're gonna get shot through or cut off, right? They're gonna be put to death. But once the announcement comes, which is the shofar blast, it sounds long, that's when the whole nation was supposed to come up the mountain where Moses was with Yahuwah. And we were supposed to be transformed. Everything would have been changed if we all would have came up. But what happened? Right, verse 14.
and Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes.
Uh-huh.
And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day. Come not at your wives.
Be ready, prepare yourself, right? Because it's the day. It's the day to redeem the past of what happened to Eden. This the day to restore all things. Right? And what happened? Shemot 19, verse 16.
And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightning, and a thin cloud upon the mount, and very powerful blasts of a shofar exceeding loud, so that the entire nation that was in the camp trembled.
Mm,
And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the near part of the mount.
mm-hmm,
And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Jehovah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked violently. And
mm-hmm.
when the sound of the shofar grew increasingly louder, stronger, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and Elohim answered him by a voice.
And
The
so notice that. So he's the shofar was exceedingly loud, right? This is Yahuwah's voice louder and long, going longer and louder and stronger. And then Moses spoke to Elohim, and Elohim answered by a voice, right? So the shofar is a horn of a ram, right? Or a goat. The patriarchs were sheep and goat herders, right? So the ram and goat's horns were available in plenty. But many people around the world use animal horns for a multitude of purposes, right? And we have no biblical reference for any kind of horns or trumpets until we get to the revelation at Sinai. And this is our first introduction to the shofar, but it's not a physical shofar. It's a spiritual shofar, right? This sound of Elohim, right? Which eventually turns into words, right? So my question to you all is, outside of Torah, can you think of a scripture that tells us what our people did on this day of Yom Teruah? Because so far we've just been looking and focused on the Torah, right? But anywhere outside of the Torah, is there any place that shows us what our people did on this day of Yom Teruah? Anybody? Can y'all think of?
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say on that day, but I just knew that also Jericho, when they sound the horn.
They use the shofar in Jericho. All right. But I'm specifically talking about when they celebrate the
Yeah.
feast. Right, right. So we're gonna look at an example here. Hopefully we got enough time. All right. So this is Yom Teruah and Nabi Nehemiah, right? Prophet Nehemiah, right? So uh in context of the Nehemiah and Sinai, we find the only recorded instance of a Yom Teruah celebration in the entire Tanakh, as noted in the book of Nehemiah. And this raises the question is, did we originate these things, or did Nehemiah and Ezra also draw from earlier traditions, right? And to provide some background, this event takes place around 70 years after Nebuchadnezzar conquered the land of Israel and exiled its inhabitants to Babylon, right? And now, as a small group is returning to Israel to rebuild their ancestral homeland, right? And however, these returnees that appear are rather uninformed about their heritage and seem unaware of the Torah, right? And coincidentally, it is Yom Teruah. It's the day of Yom Teruah. But they are oblivious to this fact until Nehemiah informs them, right? And lacking proper infrastructure, they are, you know, they just like out of understanding what's going on, right? And there's a band of volunteers, and they're marking a fresh start on the first day of Yom Teruah. Okay, because he's like, look, we just came back. The people don't even know what's going on. Let me reaffirm, because today that we come back is actually the feast of Yom Teruah. Right? Let's look at Nehemiah 8, verse 1 through 4, real quick.
And all the people gathered themselves together as one man into the street that was before the water gate, and they spoke unto Israel the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, which Joel had commanded to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel the priest brought the law before the congregation, both of men and women, and all that could hear with understanding upon the first day of the seventh month.
Mm-hmm.
And he read therein before the street that was before the water gate, from the morning until midday, before the men and the women, and those that could understand. And the ears of all the people were attentive unto the book of the law. And Ezra the scribe stood on a tower of wood, which they had made for the purpose. And besides him stood Mattaniah, Shema, Ananiah, Uriah, Hilkiah, Messiah on his right hand, and on the left hand is Pedaiah, Mishael, Micaiah, and Hisham, and Hishbadana, Zechariah, and Meshullam.
Cain, right? So notice he mentions the names of the people standing beside him, right? And this is again, this is the commemoration day, Yom Teruah. They're reading the book of the law, right? Because they're coming out of Babylon captivity, and they don't even know that today is the feast day of Yom Teruah. And Prophet Nehemiah is reminding them, and they're reading the Torah, right? He's standing on the podium, right? And he has these brothers that's standing with him, right? And the names of the people standing beside him. Now, do we know who they are is the question. Because if you're writing a book for future generations, why specify the names of those that are on your side, right? Why should it matter to us, right? It does matter, which is why he included it in the text, right? So we got to understand what is the purpose of it. So let's read verse 5 through 6 here. Nehemiah 8, verse 5 through 6.
And Israel opened the book in the sight of all the people, for he was above all the people. And he opened it, and all the people stood up. And Israel blessed Yahuwah the great Elohim, and all the people answered, Amen, Amen, with lifting up their hands, and they bowed their heads and worshiped Yahuwah with their faces to the ground.
Can. Now I just put Amen is a Hebrew word, okay? It doesn't mean Amen Ra, it don't mean none of that. It got nothing to do with Egyptian gods, all right? It's a Hebrew word and it actually means faithfulness, right? Truly, Amen. So be it, truth, right? So don't let nobody trip you up with Amen. It's a Hebrew word, all right? Or Aman.
A lot of people is putting that out there.
Right, right. Where else were the people united in unison listening to the Torah that Yahuwah commanded Moses? Because notice this is what's going on right now in Nehemiah's time. They're coming out of captivity. They celebrating Yom Teruah, and he's standing up higher than the other people, just like somebody we know that was standing up higher than the rest of the people at a mountain. And he is teaching and reading the Torah just as somebody we know, right? So there's a commemoration going on, right? So we know that uh, Moshe was doing this during Yom Teruah, right? And then where do we find one man set apart from the rest, standing a bit higher, right? Where did the people respond with yes, yes, amen, amen, right? It's the question. Didn't we read that in Shemot 19 where the nation of Israel agreed to the vows of the covenant and said, yes, yes, everything Yahuwah said we will do, right? So again, this is a commemoration. This evokes the memories, right, of the revelation of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It mirrors the first revelation. People gathered around the mountain, united, right, as one, listening to the Torah. And when Moses elevated on the mountain, they responded with Amen, Amen to everything that Yahuwah commanded, reflecting a profound connection to the revelation at Sinai, right? And furthermore, Nehemiah seems to be conveying a deeper message with the play on words. Remember the street, um, where they said that it was a street here. Remember that, and all the people gathered themselves together as one into the street that was before the water gate here in verse 1. And they spoke unto Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moshe, which Yahuwah had commanded to Israel. Right. So the question becomes, what's the purpose of mentioning the street? Right. What is this for? Right. So do we know the name of the street? Because it doesn't even mention the name of the street. Right. Does it matter? Because as we know, we at Sinai, right? They were at a mountain. The mountain is known as Sinai or Horeb, right? Mount Horeb. So interestingly, the Hebrew word for street, right? The Hebrew word for street. So we when we see Sinai is also known as Mount Horeb, but then when we look up the Hebrew word for street, it also is the same letters as Horeb, but it's just rearranged, right? It's rearranged. So street is Rebco, right? But it's the same letters that's used for Mount Horeb, right? So is that a coincidence? So we're going to take a moment to consider the names of the individuals that are stationed to the right and the left of Ezra in verse 4, because again, this whole celebration is a commemoration of an event that took place, right? Which is Sinai, all right? Mount Horeb, all right? So we saw in Nehemiah chapter 8, it named the guys that were, or the brothers that were standing next to him. First, we have Mattathiah, right? Or Mattathiah, which means the gift given by Elohim, right? Or the gift of El, right? Or the gift of Yahuwah. So it prompts us to remember that Sinai was the occasion when the Torah was bestowed by Yahuwah, right? Then two, we have Shemaiah, right? Shemaiah, and this translates to hearing. Okay, so highlighting an essential aspect of the experience at Sinai where they heard the voice of Elohim, they heard the blast, right? The shofar longing and sounding off. And then three, we have anaya, right? Meaning answering, right? That word, that anaya, is definition means answering. And this name brings to mind the people's response upon hearing Yahuwah's voice at Sinai, where they proclaim everything that Yahuwah says we will do, right? Answering to the call. And then 4, we have turning to the left of Ezra, we have Padiah, right? Now Padiah, this name means redeemed by Yahuwah, right? Aligning perfectly with Yahuwah's declaration at Sinai, where he introduced himself as one who redeems. I redeemed you. I brought you out of the house of bondage, out of Mizraim, right? And then the 5th name we have is Malchiah, right? Or Malchiah, all right? Meaning Yahuwah is king. That's what that name means, right? So this name reflects the central theme at Sinai, which is Yahuwah revealing himself as the king of Israel and us coronating him as king, and our first encounter with him where he reveals himself, right? And then 6, we have Zechariah or Zechariah, right? And this translates to the remembrance of Yahuwah, right? Further emphasizing the significance of this event. All right. And then last here, we have the 7th with this Hashbadana, right? Hashbadana, meaning to think and to judge. Right. So it ties into the essence of the day commemorated by Yom Teruah. This day marks Yahuwah's revelation as king, right? Malkiah, a day of remembrance of Yahuwah, Zechariah, and a day where Yahuwah assesses his creation and determines their place, Hashbadana, right? So this evokes the imagery of Sinai, as if Sinai revelation is repeating itself, right? Though not in the same manner, but we see here in Nehemiah's time, there's no towering mountain this time. Instead, it's very simple. It's flat in a man-made street, and there's no divine presence descending from the heavens. Instead, the street leads to the water gate, right? During the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, everything seemed diminished. The crowd is small, and the man addressing them stands on something like a podium, but much less, monumental than what Moses was standing on, right? So it's merely a small wooden platform. And yet I believe this diminishment is precisely the point of Nehemiah's message that he's conveying, right? What they were doing may not seem significant to the people, which is why they cried, right? We're going to look at that. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 7 says, and also Yeshua and Bani and Sharibiah, Yamin, Akub, Shabbatai, Hadiah, Maaseiah, and Kalita, and Azariah, Yozabad, Hanan, and Peleah, and the Levites caused the people to understand the law, and the people stood in their place. And so they read in the book, in the law of Elohim distinctly, and gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. And Nehemiah, which is Tershatha, which is the Tershatha, and Ezra, the priest, the scribe, and the Levites that taught the people, said unto all the people, this day is unto Yahuwah, your Elohim, mourn not, nor weep, for all the people wept when they heard the words of the law. All right. Then he said unto them, go your way, eat the fat and drink the sweet, and send portions unto them for whom nothing is prepared. For this day is set apart to our master. Do not be sad, for the joy of Yahuwah is your strength, right? So what they were doing, again, may not seem significant to people, right? But they cried, right? They saw themselves as insignificant, having returned from captivity from Babylon, on a noble yet idealistic mission to rebuild their homeland, right? There was no established infrastructure or great Hebrew state or nothing, right? It was just them alongside Ezra and Nehemiah. They hardly understood much and wept as they realized how far they were from the ideals described in the Torah that they was reading. Right? They didn't even know it was Yom Teruah. Prophet Nehemiah had to remind them, prompting their tears. However, Nehemiah intervened, instructing them to stop crying, stop weeping, right? Why? Because today is Yom Teruah. This day is dedicated to Yahuwah. He urged them not to be sad, reminding them that the joy of Yahuwah is your strength, all right? So Nehemiah reassured them that there is a master with divine purposes and a grand story interwoven through history. Their delight brings them strength, and they are part of this incredible narrative, which should fill them with joy, right? So Nehemiah instructed them to go home and celebrate. They had just listened to the Torah being read publicly for 6 hours. Even if they felt inadequate and following its teachings, the Torah represents Yahuwah's vision of good and evil. And they should aspire to be a part of that vision and story that he has laid out for them, right? They needed to leave with strength and be uplifted in spirit, knowing they are part of Yahuwah's delight and his perfect plan, right? So this is their greatest strength, and it has always been Israel's strength, right? So what they are doing on this humble street is a reflection of Sinai itself, and the upcoming celebration of Yom Teruah is a reiteration of that significant event, right? Their return to the ruins of Jerusalem from a perspective of the master, which holds profound meaning, right? Looking back at Hebrew history, what were their what were these people engaged in, right? They were constructing the second temple, which would have, stood for 400 years, and each person presented and played a vital role in Hebrew history, right? They don't even know that they was making history at that point, acting in a starring role, right, on this grand stage that they was on. It didn't look like much at that time, but it was something that they was building that would be significant, would be historic, right? And they are part of Yahuwah's larger story, making their actions incredibly significant. Although they may not fully grasp the larger narrative at that moment, the melody soundtrack reserved for the master to orchestrate. Nehemiah reminded them of this existence, right? And how they needed to see it. Even during trials and tribulations, Yahuwah plays the violins of their narrative, right? Fully aware of the story's progression. If only they could hear Yahuwah's soundtrack to their lives, right? They will recognize the echoes of Sinai resonating in their actions today. Everything happening now matters, and understanding the part each person plays in this vast story being written by everyone involved, right? And everyone is essential to the grand story, the grand tale, all right? And interestingly, when the people returned home to celebrate, Nehemiah described their joy with the phrase Simcha Gedola, right? Meaning great rejoicing. This phrase only appears once before during Solomon's coronation, the builder of the first temple. And now they are the builders of the second temple and will also be the builders of the third. So it's a day of coronation, but there is no earthly king present, only Yahuwah, right? On Yom Teruah, the day the king enters their lives, they join in and they are in joy and celebration, right? So this is what this is all about, y'all, right? This is what this is all about. So again, the day of remembrance, Yom Zikron Teruah is the day of remembrance of the cry of the shofar, right? It is the day that we made intimate contact with Yahuwah, right? It's where we connected deeply with Elohim, all right? It's the day that we remember Eden's mistakes, right? This is the day, it's a moment where we reflect on the mistakes made in the garden, right? It's also the day that we redeem the past and plan for the future, right? So it's the day we remember the first shofar blast that calls to mind the judgment upon humanity that we first heard in the garden, and then our second chance to redeem what happened in the garden at Mount Sinai, right? And then the day of judgment as well, all right? And the return of Mashiach is all about, all right? We get a third chance at Mount Zion to redeem the past, right? And will we be prepared this time? It's the question, right? So my prayer for you, this Yom Teruah, is that you experience it with intention and depth, right? Take time to reflect on the past year. Consider whether there was anything you could have done differently, right? Did you fulfill the promises you made? If not, you have about 3 weeks to work towards completing those commitments before the ingathering of Sukkot, commonly called tabernacles, right? Even if you don't achieve everything, strive to make progress so that when we stand before our King, when he inspects us during harvest time, we can express that there is still potential within us. We deserve to be part of his grand narrative, his grand plan, his grand, story. This is not a mere game, right? And too many of us treat it lightly, thinking, oh, well, I'll just do it next year or so forth. But this is a significant story, right? And we all have our roles to play. We must play them well because we're all connected, right? It's up to you to get where y'all purpose you, because you have to get to other people that need you as well. Everybody, we all need each other, right? To complete this whole grand tale, this story that Elohim has purpose, right? So we have to play our positions well. Life is serious. So it's not a joke. And we exist for a purpose, and we have been invited into Yah's magnificent story. So each of us plays a part, and it is a privilege to be involved in a narrative that may often seem challenging from our limited viewpoint at times, right? But to our King, it's a beautiful love tale. All right. And that in itself is extraordinary, right? Which is why we refer to this time as the days of awe, right? Because we stand in awe before our King on this day, right? And the days hereafter leading up to Yom Sukkot, the ingathering, all right? And so with that being said, family, that concludes the lesson. Any questions pertaining to the lesson, Ms. Pakar? Any questions, family? Everybody good? Mm-mm-mm. All right, everybody good? No question. No questions. We'll go ahead and pray out. Any prayer requests as we pray out? All right.
I have a prayer that we truly examine ourselves so that we are ready for the Sukkot when we stand before our King.
Okay. All right. Hallelujah. All right. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Blessed be your name, Almighty Yah. Teruah Yah, for this beloved day of Yom Teruah, Yahuwah, the day of the blasting of the shofar, Yahuwah, in the remembrance of you being our covenant king, O Yahuwah, our Elohim, our bridegroom, our husbandman, O Elohim. We are just grateful to be considered yours, Almighty Yah, and that you have loved us, O Yahuwah, and have covered us and have spared us throughout all these times, even throughout what our forefathers have done, Father Yah, and their mistakes and failures, and those who stood up to redeem, that which was forsaken, and to pick up the torch and pass it down to the next generation, O Yahuwah. We just pray that we be of your divine set apart ones, O Yahuwah, of your chosen, that will return unto your covenant wholeheartedly, Father, with all our heart, mind, body, soul, and spirit and strength, Father Yah, that we may serve you, Father, and delight in doing your will above all things, Father Yah, and be righteous examples to inspire others to seek back and return back to your covenant, O Yahuwah. We just pray, Father, that the words that we receive today, that it is seep deep down in our hearts, Father, that we may walk in fullness and function of who you created and purpose us to be, Father Yah. That we will guard your word diligently and be devoted to your fear, Almighty Elohim, and keep you at the forefront of our hearts in all things that we do, that we always be found doing that which is well pleasing in your sight, O Yahuwah, and not of our own ways and our own delights, Father, that has nothing to do with you, O Yahuwah. We just pray, Father, that we continue to seek your face, O Yahuwah. And even as we are celebrating today, and moving forward to Sukkot, Father, that we continue to purge and continue to grow and walk in full maturity as you purpose us, that we may bear good fruit, Almighty God, that we be trees set apart for you and your righteousness, bearing good fruit that others may be able to glean from, Father, and grow and become also mature as well and nourished in the things of Elohim and Mighty Yah. But you have called us to be disciples, Father, and called us to be the lights in the world of darkness, Almighty Yah. So we just pray that your light continue to shine vibrantly within us, O Yahuwah. And that we be not fearful of men and their criticism, their opinions, or their whatever that they have against your righteousness, that we stand bold for you, Father, in love and oneness with you and your spirit, and to be the examples that you would like to see, Father, those who would stand in the gap for those who don't know what they do, Almighty Yah, and that we can be a mediator, oh Yahuwah, to draw the souls back to you that belong to you, Almighty Elohim. We just thank you for your mercy, your grace as you show towards us each and every day. We thank you for all your provisions, O Yahuwah, that we go not without, Almighty Elohim. We just pray that you comfort all those who may be mourning at this time, Father, that you will bring joy into their hearts, O Yahuwah, that you will bring comfort into their hearts, that they may be able to esteem and exalt you above all forever, O Yahuwah, and even rejoice, even in this time, in this season that we are in, Father Yah, in your appointed times, O Yahuwah. We just love you, Father, and we just pray as we even depart from this place that you will continue to keep your mighty warrior, Archmelekim, surrounding us, protecting us from anything seen and unseen dangers, and that your force field and your shield surround us, protecting us from any carnal or spiritual attacks of the enemy, Almighty Yah. We just pray you continue to lead us and guide us in the path that we all should go. Continue to keep us for your name's sake, Almighty Yah, in Yahushua Mashiach's name. Father, we love you. We praise you and we give you all esteem and honor. And we just pray that your will be done on earth as it is in Shemayim forevermore. In Yahushua HaMashiach's name, we pray that we may be found worthy as your beloved brides, O Yahuwah, without spot, without blemish, that you will find faith, O Yahuwah, when you return, and that we be vessels of honor unto you, Father, well pleasing as your set apart children and as the bride of your son, Yahushua HaMashiach. We love you and we praise you. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All right. All right, family. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Much love. Shalom, shalom. Happy Yom Teruah.
Shalom, shalom.
All right.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.